Number one on the list, ladies and gentlemen, 27th of July 1984. It's Metallica with Ride the Lightning.
Okay, gang. It's time to send your parents to bed. This next band is gonna blow the doors off this mother. Their new album debuted at #1, and it's still the #1 album in the country. This is Metallica!
Well, actually it's not. It's real lightning. It's my guess that it came before number 2 by a few years. Judas Priest's Electric Eye album. No, we're talking Jerry Anderson as number 2 on the list.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
People back in the day noticed that fish could spark a bit. Ancient Egyptian texts dating from around 2750 BC, he referred to these fish as the Thunderer of the Nile and described them as the protectors of all other fish. The god of fish. Sorry, Gene. Several ancient writers, such as Pliny the Elder, attested to the numbing effect of the electric shocks delivered by the electric catfish and the electric rays, or what I prefer to call stingray. Yeah. I've got the whole set. Sue me. Ancient cultures around the Mediterranean knew that certain objects such as rods of amber, which the Greeks called electrons, could be rubbed with cat's fur to attract light objects like feathers. Thales of Miletus made a series of observations on static electricity around 600 BCE, from which he believed that friction rendered amber magnetic, in contrast to minerals such as magnetite, which needed no rubbing. Good on him. Electricity would remain a mystery until the 1600s, where we move on to William Gilbert and his magnum opus, De Magnete. Okay, you studied Latin, you should be able to read this. His primary scientific work, much inspired by earlier works of Robert Norman, was De Magnete Magnetisque Corporibus et de Mango Magnet Telluri. Good God. No wonder it never hit #1 on the shelves. Yep. On the magnet and magnetic bodies, and on the great magnet of the earth. Published in 1600, in his work he describes many of his experiments with his model earth called the Terrella. Terrella, a small magnetized model ball representing the earth. Okay. From these experiments, he concluded that the earth was itself magnetic, and that this was the reason compasses point to the north. He was first to argue correctly that the centre of the earth was iron. Now, I hate to disappoint you, Mr. William Gilbert, but the greatest person on earth, Nathan Oakley, debunks the globe earth model and the fact that there's iron in the core of the earth, because he says so. And if you don't agree with him, he'll shout at you. It's all the same crap. Started by Samuel Rowbottom, who wrote on Zetetic Astronomy. The earth was not a globe. He wrote it under a pseudonym because he didn't want Nathan Oakley to find out. Actually, some dude sitting on a beach by the name of Eric Dubay discovered this old book in the sand, and he's now become infamous by copying it and publishing it under his own name. There's no dishonesty in the Flat Earth movement. What are you talking about? So, next up we have this dude here, Francis Hauksbee, who was craving attention from Sir Isaac Newton, newly appointed leader of the Royal Society of London. He came up with this cool device thingy here. He invented a glass sphere and an air pump that sucked out the air in the glass sphere, with which in here, you get this mysterious blue light when all the lights are off. What? Candles. They had candles. Alrighty-o then. Then he turned the handle and generated a blue spark. A mysterious spark, but still nobody knew who it was, what it was, or why it was. So it remained a mystery still. Next. Moving forward for that, we come to Charlie Bucket. It looks like Charlie Bucket. No, we don't. We come to Stephen Gray. And if you go to the English Wikipedia page, there's no photo. You have to go to this page in whatever language this is. There he is in all his glory. So he took good old Francis Hawksby's machine and built a cabinety thing like that with silk holding up the child, and from the Hawksby machine he had a rod sticking out that could make the boy become electromagnetic. What's the word? I don't know. Pinterest. Whew. Let's go to Pinterest. And so he would shock the audience, by picking up gold feathers, gold what? Clippings, chipping, something, and feathers and other materials. And there he is. There's his hand. Ooh, where's the rest of him? It was all chopped off, eh? Next up is the guy with the longest name on planet Earth. Correction. Professor Pieter von Musschenbroek. He was a shocking man. He invented the Leyden jar. And his discovery came by, instead of normally sticking this jar on an insulated substance, such as here, glass is insulated. Yeah. So he didn't stick it on a base. He forgot. He was still holding it in his hand. And he touched the top, and it gave him what it would have given him about 240 volts. And then, after coming about from that shock, he wrote in his nightly nuptials, his journal, don't ever do that again. Please, nobody on earth do that again. It's like pissing on an electric fence. So then his discovery was that you could store the electrical charge in the jar for hours upon hours or days upon days. So that's the beginning of heading towards, in my opinion, a battery. Just an ordinary, ever-ready AAA AA battery. Oh, 200 years before robots existed. Yeah, so he pumped himself up with the Hawksby machine, and instead of sitting it on a base, he kept it in his hand, and it happened. I made a mistake. The other dude didn't have the longest name in the world. This dude does. Georges Louis Leclerc, also known as the Comte de Buffon. Sorry. No disrespect to your lord, my lord. He took the writings of Benjamin Franklin and, well, somebody else did, translated that into French, and he built this tripodish thing at Mary-le-Ville outside the, wow, it looks like a mansion. I mean, it might have been just a house, a dig back in the day. And he stuck a Leyden jar at the bottom. I wonder if I got a photo. No. What about on his page? Anything to do with your experiment on your webpage, mate? No. Stuff it. So, yeah, a tripod thingy with a Leyden jar at the bottom. And lightning came along and struck the top of the rod that was sticking out of this tripodish thing. And charged the Leyden jar. Yeah, so that was a real kick in the guts for Ken Ham, this device machine mechanism thingy. It proved that humans could control God's power, God's finger of lightning. And a lot of blasphemy ensued because of this. Next. Yeah, so from that, Benjamin Franklin deduced that one end of the pole was positive and the other was negative. And the battery was created. Not yet. Wait. So as we start to build toasters the size of nanometers so that we lose it in the toast, the Leyden jar transferred from this big, nice, tall, big thingy to what we call today capacitors, little tiny thingies. And now they're in nanometers in length. It's all going crazy. Okay, we haven't got to Mario quite yet. We have a flat earth debunker, Cavendish, doing his experiment to prove that the Cavendish experiment, to measure the force of gravity between masses in a laboratory, and the first to yield accurate values for the gravitational constant, which all flat earthers deny even exists. We have Bob the Science Guy's built one, I think Wilfie 2040, and others. And still the flat earthers are denying, Anthony Riley has built a Cavendish experiment thingy, and even building it himself, he denies it. In exactly the same vein that Bob Nodell has denied his own 15 degrees per hour thing.
But what we found is when we turned on that gyroscope, we found that we were picking up a drift, a 15 degree per hour drift.
Jeranism has denied his own experiment where the light didn't prove a flat earth, so all sorts of stuff going on now.
Enrique, how high is your light?
17 feet.
I mean, it's as we don't see you, Enrique. Lift up your light way above your head. Interesting.
I think the flat earth movement's over and dead and gone. So let's move on to torpedo fish. So what this guy Cavendish, have you got a photo of him? Yeah, here we go. Here's a nice photo of him. He studied torpedo fish and he realized that the torpedo fish gave off the same spark as the Leyden jar touching two ends, positive and negative. And he said, aha! And then he said, well, one's high voltage and the other is low voltage. So that's all we have to say about Henry Cavendish, except that he did not invent the Foucault's pendulum, Mr. Anthony Riley. Okay, on to Mario. Finally, we have in the left corner, we have Luigi, Mario's brother, Luigi Galvani. We'll call him Ken Ham. In the other corner, we have Alessandro Volta. We'll call him Bill Nye the Science Guy. So they're both having a dig or pulling apart frogs for fun. And Luigi's idea was that the frogs, the God-given rights to the frogs, meant that the frogs produced their own animal electricity. And that came from God. Whereas an atheist such as Volta denied the existence of frogs.
Hunsworm hat. Really quick video.
Wanted to know more. So he deduced that it was the metal that this guy Luigi was prodding the frogs with that was causing their muscles to twitch after they'd been long deadified. And so to prove his point, so Luigi publishes this magnum opus, and he goes, this is it, I have the answer. And Volta goes, nah, you don't have the answer, mate. So he took it upon himself, Volta, to create a mechanical torpedo fish. The electric ray, or what I'd like to call stingray, yeah, whatever. And so he built this, which became the voltaic pile, to prove that the electricity came from outside of the frogs. So the BBC documentary I'm watching for all these notes is beginning with Humphrey Davy, but we can leave him as a footnote. All he did was wire up 800 voltaic piles and amused an audience with electric light. More on that later. And then we're going to a side note with the gory side of this experimenting. We have Boris Karloff come on the scene. Good old Frankenstein himself. So this dude, Giovanni Aldani, started shocking dead bodies to make them move, their muscles move, and do geeky, gawky, graphic, gross, scientificistic experiments with them. Ew. And of course, somebody that heard about Giovanni Aldini's gross experiments was Mary Shelley, Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley. By the way, in preparation for this episode, Frankenstein is not the monster's name. Frankenstein's the name of the doctor. So let's make up a word for Boris. Let's call him Boris. Let's call the monster Boris, in honor of Boris Karloff. Yeah, why not? Cool. So now on to Dire Straits Live Alchemy. Alright. So Hans Christian Ørsted discovered that there was a link between the electrical force and magnetism, which we call today electromagnetism. And some dude wanted to dick around with that and play with it and do experiments and stuff, and his name was Michael Faraday, who built the Michael Faraday inductor. Why they name it after himself? What? So he built an inductor. Shut up. So by the movement of that going through that, you can manually, and then on a rotating wheel, you can manually produce current with this machine. I suppose if you stuck a mouse running around on one of those circus wheels, you could have the mouse running it all day long and run your house off a mouse. So then we move on to the telegraph road. The invention of the telegraph is the point in history where electricity moved from just being for fun, for clowns, for entertainment, to actually being useful for something. So let's get into that, shall we? Okay, so we'll finish this off with the battle between AC and DC, who got together and put out the album Hell's Bells. Why not? So, backtracking a bit, so Samuel Morse invented the Samuel Finlay Breeze Morse code, which I had to learn for my badge when I was a kid. And so they had problems transmitting it over these lines until they had to think about, is the power sending these all in one signal, or what's known in the computer world as packets? That's how I like to remember it, describe it. It's like in bursts, which is why the signal wasn't clear. So they figured that out. And then Humphrey Davy invents his arc lights. And then Warren de la Rue invents the light bulb. And we got Joseph Swan inventing an incandescent light bulb. And after these three did it, Humphrey Davy, Warren de la Rue and Joseph Swan, this guy gets the credit for inventing it. Which he didn't invent it. He was like number 7 on the list. So screw that for lies. That's not teaching truth. It's like a flat earth theory. Anyway, on to him, taking on Elon Musk himself, the original. Nikola Tesla, AC versus DC, Hell's Bells, the dangers of rock and roll. We'll get into some Eric Holmberg, shall we? All right.
I submit to you that what you are about to hear is the same spirit that motivated Bon Scott bragging, "Hey, you can't kill me, I'm back." Listen to the words and how he sings them.
So, the end of that catastrophe, Joseph Swan went into partnership with Edison. Edison did a fucking Nathan Thompson on him, bailed with all the glory, and Joseph Swan went into hiding, that nobody knows that he had anything to do with the light bulb unless you don't live in America. So then JP Morgan happens, and as we know, all those into the One World Government conspiracy theories. JP Morgan was a One World Government member, and so was Rockefeller Skank, and they run the governments of the world by not running the governments, but secretly running the governments, and they're the ones who are hiding all the greens or the greys, the reptilian aliens that live underground, which has nothing to do with electricity. Let's move on. I skipped over Alexander Graham Bell. Telephones, telegrams, telephones. That's going to come into fruition when we get onto how does music get recorded before we get into making Amiga demos. So I will eat humble pie, and I will give Edison a bit of credit. He's created the system in which power can transmit from one power station to buildings, to street lamps, to buildings, and eventually it will be including power lines, power pylons, or whatever they're called. So yeah, he did something good, and he didn't just rip off people all the time. Sometimes he may have done something himself. Who knows? It's a mystery, and always will be a mystery. Check this photo out. Wow, cool. Okay, so I've got the end bit. I've watched it so many times I know it off by heart. So before Nikola Tesla created SpaceX, that's a joke there. You've got a frickin' Nikola Tesla, Elon Musk conspiracy theory going on there, lad. So Edison had a way to transmit his direct current, I'm doing some low tab research here, high IQ research, just like a flat earther. So Edison had a way to transmit his direct current to all of Manhattan, but couldn't go further than Manhattan without building another power station by inventing SimCity and having a power station on every corner. And then SimCity 2000, you'd have to have it flying in the air. So, before they got power stations flying in the air, Nikola Tesla comes along on the scene with his induction motor. And basically the documentary goes something like Edison was a slob and Tesla always looked pretty like this all the time. And Tesla worked for Edison for a while and got stiffed out of some money, so he quit. I think he might have, it says he might have met Edison twice before the big battle, I presume. So he left and he started up his own company, and he started working on alternating current, which is, if you type it in, you get direct current versus alternating current anyway, so it's both. So this is where I end it because I don't understand. Apparently direct current goes one way and alternating current goes both ways. That's all I know. That's all I want to know for the purposes of this. Oh, I missed out on Alexander Graham Bell, sorry. So, yeah. George Westinghouse sides with Tesla to get alternating current as long as Tesla can come up with a way to transmitting alternating current from city to city. And apparently, on the mental health side of things, in the end, Nikola Tesla gets very, like me, social anxiety, doesn't like spending time with people. His best friends are the pigeons, and when one pigeon died, he got depressed, died a very lonely man. But apparently he had an eidetic memory. So I had to Google the word because I don't know what, I've never heard of it before. So it's a photographic memory. But the way they explain it in the documentary is he can see things in 3D. So I'm waiting for that to happen to me, you know, because every time I research a subject, I become the character in the subject. So yeah, so Tesla goes on to create Tesla's egg of Columbus, which was a spinning egg. And with the spinning egg, he was able to, let's read it because I don't understand this at all. Tesla's egg of Columbus was a device exhibited in the Westinghouse electric display at the 1893 Chicago World's Columbian Exposition to explain the rotating magnetic field that drove the new alternating current induction motors designed by inventor Nikola Tesla by using that magnetic field to spin a copper egg on end. So the egg doesn't do anything itself, it's just for show. That's what I'm guessing. So there we go. He creates the way to distribute his alternating current from Manhattan to, how's the song go? To the streets of Berlin. Well, first we're in Manhattan, then we're in Berlin, something like that. So yep, and I was going to Google all the conspiracy theories about Tesla, but I don't care anymore. I used to be into that crap. Philadelphia experiment and the other one. He invented time travel. There's lots of conspiracy theories, all fictitious. So yeah, so we'll just tell this story and we're done. So Edison gets a hold of alternating current. And apparently he kills cows and horses and dogs in the name of, I don't know, being a frickin' arsehole. And then this elephant had been playing up. Apparently it injured somebody, a member of the public, so got a bit nasty. So they were going to put it down anyway, so he decides to go, aha, I'm going to prove to the world that alternating current is dangerous, and I'm going to take all the glory, and Tesla's going to die a lonely man, which he did anyway, you dick. And so that happens, and so Tesla has to come back with something. So what he does, he holds a wire, he wraps it around his body with like 10,000 volts. And he, holds the ends up, and the electricity flows through his body and out the other end and lights up a light. And he wins this stupid argument. But then Thomas Edison gets on to get all the glory for inventing record players, microphones, light bulbs, alternating current and direct current, and Morse code and everything else, the telephone, the phonograph record. He gets the glory for everything that he had nothing to do with. So we'll leave it at that, on a high note. Any Edison lovers out there, you're going to hate this. Bye.